Introduction. Success. It's a word that evokes ambition, pressure, and an almost universal desire. From boardrooms to bedrooms, people chase it relentlessly, believing it lies in hard work, discipline, talent, or maybe even luck. But what if the true engine of success has less to do with the outside world and far more to do with the unseen world inside your skull? Every decision you make, every goal you set, every habit you form, and every relationship you cultivate is shaped by an invisible orchestra playing quietly in the background of your mind. That orchestra is brain chemistry. Beneath the surface of your thoughts and behaviors, a symphony of neurotransmitters and hormones are determining your drive, focus, emotional resilience, and even your ability to connect with others. It's not just about positive thinking or grinding harder. Real, lasting success begins with understanding and mastering the chemicals that run your brain. This book is not about reducing human achievement to biology, but about revealing a truth that too few people understand. Your biology is a tool, not a prison. When you understand how brain chemicals like dopamine, cortisol, serotonin, and oxytocin shape your mood, motivation, and mindset, you unlock the power to work with your biology, not against it. Think of the most successful people you know. What sets them apart may not be their upbringing or their education, but their ability to harness mental states that others constantly struggle to maintain. Focus under pressure, confidence in uncertainty, calm in chaos, and clarity in conflict. These aren't magical traits. They're the result of a finely tuned neurochemical balance that anyone can develop with the right awareness and habits. We live in a world obsessed with hustle culture, productivity hacks, and mental toughness. But while everyone else is looking outward, at tools, systems, and external strategies, this book invites you to look inward, where the true game of success is being played. When you understand how your brain chemistry works, you stop fighting yourself and start designing a mind that fuels your goals. Throughout these pages, we'll explore how brain science explains the behaviors behind success, and more importantly, how to shift your internal chemistry to support the life you want to build. Whether you're an entrepreneur chasing peak performance, a student trying to stay focused, a parent juggling demands, or simply someone who feels like you're capable of more but keep hitting invisible walls, this book is your guide to unlocking the truth within. The hidden truth behind success is not a secret code, a morning routine, or a lucky break. It's the biological reality that your brain, when understood and cared for, can become your most powerful ally. Let's uncover that truth together. Chapter 1. The Chemical Blueprint of Success. What if everything you thought you knew about success was only half the truth? What if the real machinery behind achievement wasn't your to-do list, your credentials, or even your level of intelligence, but something far more foundational, subtle, and powerful, your brain chemistry? At its core, success is not just about external accomplishment, but about internal regulation. Before a person lands the job, launches the business, finishes the degree, or builds the empire, there's a quiet but potent sequence of events unfolding within the brain that sets the stage for action, resilience, creativity, and connection. Human behavior is not random. It is orchestrated, often unconsciously, by a complex chemical system in the brain. These chemicals, neurotransmitters and hormones, are the messengers that tell you when to act, when to rest, when to push forward, and when to shut down. They dictate how motivated you feel, how you respond to failure, how well you focus, how connected you feel to others, and whether you spiral into self-doubt or stand firm in your sense of purpose. Most people spend their entire lives reacting to these signals without ever understanding them. But the truth is, once you understand the roles of these brain chemicals, you can begin to take control of the very engine that powers your life. Success is often narrowly defined by income, titles, or social recognition. But from a neuroscientific perspective, success is better understood as a sustained ability to act intentionally, adapt skillfully, and thrive under pressure while maintaining psychological and emotional well-being. True success is not just reaching the top. It's doing so with clarity, peace of mind, and a deep sense of alignment. It is the ability to keep showing up with energy and resilience, to learn from failure without being paralyzed by it, and to maintain strong, trusting relationships that support your vision. At the heart of this internal ecosystem are four key chemicals: dopamine, serotonin, cortisol, and oxytocin. Each of these plays a distinct and vital role in shaping your personal success story. Dopamine is often referred to as the motivation molecule. It is the fuel behind your drive to achieve goals and chase rewards. Whenever you anticipate something pleasurable, completing a task, receiving praise, earning a promotion, dopamine levels spike. It gives you the energetic push to move forward. However, this same system can be hijacked by instant gratification, social media likes, junk food, addictive habits. The more we feed off quick dopamine spikes, the less capable we become of sustaining the long-term focus and grit that real success demands. Harnessing dopamine isn't about avoiding pleasure. It's about rewiring your brain to find satisfaction in meaningful effort rather than short-term rewards. Serotonin is the chemical of confidence and emotional balance. It influences how secure and respected you feel, both in your own mind and in social environments. High serotonin levels are associated with emotional stability, good sleep, self-assurance, and calmness under pressure. People who regularly feel a sense of self-worth and inner peace tend to have healthy serotonin levels. Conversely, low serotonin contributes to anxiety, irritability, and self-doubt. In the pursuit of success, cultivating serotonin is like building a strong foundation. It allows you to stand firm, even when things are uncertain or stressful. Cortisol, on the other hand, is the brain's built-in alarm system. It is essential for survival, kicking in during times of danger or high pressure. It sharpens your senses, speeds up your reactions, and helps you respond to immediate threats. But while cortisol is useful in short bursts, chronic elevation, like that caused by constant stress, overwork, or toxic environments, can sabotage success. It leads to burnout, impairs memory, weakens the immune system, and reduces your capacity to think clearly. Learning to manage cortisol means learning to build sustainable success, not just success that burns bright and fast only to fizzle out in exhaustion. Oxytocin is the chemistry of connection, often called the bonding hormone. It plays a central role in building trust, empathy, and strong relationships. Success is rarely achieved alone. Whether it's a supportive team, a wise mentor, or a loyal friend, relationships form the scaffolding that supports our goals. High oxytocin levels make you more open, compassionate, and persuasive. It is not just a social nicety. It is a biochemical edge that strengthens your influence and resilience. In leadership and collaboration, oxytocin is the secret weapon that turns transactions into transformations. Understanding these four chemicals gives you a new lens through which to see your habits, your emotions, and your responses to life. Are you struggling with motivation? Check your dopamine routines. Are you constantly anxious or on edge? Your cortisol might be off balance. Do you lack self-trust or feel like an imposter? It may be a serotonin issue. Are your relationships strained or shallow? Oxytocin might be the missing piece. These aren't personality flaws. They are chemical signals asking for your attention. Your brain is not working against you. In fact, it's doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is, modern life floods us with inputs that confuse or overpower these natural systems. By becoming aware of your internal blueprint, you begin to reclaim control from the chaos. Success is no longer a matter of willpower alone. It becomes a matter of chemistry aligned with purpose. Every time you feel a rush of excitement after checking off a task, that's dopamine lighting up your reward pathways. Every moment of calm after a walk in nature or after receiving praise from someone you trust, that's serotonin stabilizing your mood and reinforcing your sense of value. Every sharp burst of anxiety when facing an overwhelming deadline or a difficult conversation, that's cortisol doing its job to keep you alert. And every warm feeling of safety when you're around someone you love or admire, that's oxytocin reminding your nervous system that you're not alone. These aren't abstract concepts. These chemicals shape your day, your decisions, and your destiny. Yet we live in a society where people are taught to blame themselves when things go wrong, for lack of willpower, for losing focus, for not being driven enough. Rarely are we taught that our drive, our focus, our persistence, and our emotional control all have chemical roots, and that these roots can be nurtured, trained, and transformed. It's easy to envy high performers, the people who wake up early with purpose, who glide through challenges with calm, who inspire others effortlessly. But what if much of what separates them from everyone else is not some special DNA or life hack, but simply a more optimized brain chemistry? What if success is not just about the strategies we apply, but about how our brain responds to stress, rewards, relationships, and rest? Understanding this opens the door to a revolutionary perspective. You can change your life by changing how your brain works. And that doesn't mean undergoing surgery or taking pills. It means learning how to shift your daily habits, your sleep, your nutrition, your movement, your focus, your relationships, so that your internal environment begins to support the outcomes you seek. It means recognizing when your brain is working against you and knowing what to do to reset it. It means becoming fluent in your own biology. Imagine being able to wake up and know exactly what to do to boost your motivation naturally. Imagine noticing your anxiety spike and knowing how to calm your nervous system in minutes. Imagine being able to walk into a room, connect deeply with others, and build trust almost effortlessly. This isn't science fiction. It's neuroscience, applied with intention. Chapter 2. Dopamine, the ambition molecule. If success were a fire, dopamine would be the spark. It is the brain's powerful reward signal, the molecule that gets you up in the morning, focused on a task, chasing goals, and hungry for more. When you feel motivated, energized, or excited about an upcoming accomplishment, whether it's finishing a project, starting a business, or simply checking off a to-do list, that drive is being fueled by dopamine. It's the molecule of anticipation, of pursuit, and of payoff. And yet, despite its power, dopamine is both your greatest ally and your most cunning trap. At the heart of every goal is the promise of a reward. This reward doesn't even have to be real or immediate. Just the expectation of reward is enough to release dopamine into the brain. This chemical fuels effort. It's the reason a marathon runner keeps training for months before race day. It's why a writer keeps tapping keys long after fatigue sets in, holding on to the vision of a finished manuscript. It's what pushes a student to study deep into the night, picturing the applause of graduation. Dopamine doesn't come only at the end of a goal. It comes all along the path, reinforcing behaviors that move you closer to what you want. But here's the hidden truth. Your brain doesn't actually care whether the goal is meaningful or empty, productive or destructive. It simply releases dopamine in response to perceived reward. That's why you feel a quick surge of pleasure when you reach for your phone, binge your favorite show, or eat a sugary snack. These are quick hits, cheap dopamine. They require almost no effort, offer instant gratification, and create a loop that your brain quickly begins to crave. This loop becomes dangerous when you begin to rely on low-effort, high-reward behaviors. The more you consume cheap dopamine, the more your brain adapts, demanding more stimulation to feel the same level of pleasure. Over time, your threshold for motivation rises. What once made you feel accomplished, completing a work task, reading a chapter, progressing toward a long-term goal, now feels dull in comparison to the fast, flashy feedback of scrolling, gaming, or compulsive online browsing. Your ambition dulls. Focus slips. The ability to delay gratification weakens. This is not just a matter of bad habits. It's a chemical trap. And many people, without knowing it, are caught in it. They wonder why they can't stay consistent, why they feel distracted or unmotivated, why their biggest goals feel harder to start. The reason is simple but profound. Their dopamine system has been hijacked. To regain control, you must begin to rewire your dopamine pathways, teaching your brain once again to crave the process, not just the reward. This starts with becoming aware of the activities that drain your dopamine reserves. Excessive phone use, compulsive checking of notifications, binge watching, snacking for emotional comfort, jumping from one quick pleasure to another. These all flood the system in the short term, but leave it depleted in the long term. They train the brain to expect satisfaction without effort, and that training undermines your drive to pursue anything that requires persistence or patience. On the other side are the habits that strengthen and balance your dopamine system. These include setting achievable daily goals and celebrating small wins. Exercise, especially cardio, is a powerful natural dopamine booster. So is novelty, learning a new skill, or exposing yourself to new challenges that stretch your capabilities. Focusing deeply on a task, also called deep work, even when it's uncomfortable, builds resilience in your dopamine pathways. Sleep, sunlight, hydration, and diet, especially foods rich in tyrosine like eggs, almonds, and avocados, also support healthy dopamine function. But perhaps the most powerful strategy of all is practicing delayed gratification. When you resist the impulse to reward yourself immediately, and instead tie rewards to meaningful effort, you train your brain to associate pleasure with progress, not shortcuts. That's when ambition becomes sustainable. You're no longer chasing empty highs. You're building momentum. You're no longer dependent on external stimuli to feel driven. Your fuel becomes internalized, sourced from the steady, deep-burning flame of purpose. Rewiring your dopamine system isn't about cutting out all pleasure. It's about redefining pleasure. It's about learning to enjoy the grind, the stretch, the journey. It's about reclaiming control of your focus and your time from the forces that profit off your distraction. It's about creating an inner system where effort feels good. Not because it's easy, but because it's meaningful. People often think of motivation as something you either have or don't. But dopamine reveals a more powerful truth. Motivation can be designed. When you understand how this chemical operates, you stop waiting for inspiration and start creating the conditions for it to thrive. Success is not a single moment. It's a series of consistent actions sustained over time. And consistency is impossible without a healthy, trained dopamine system. The secret isn't working harder. It's craving the right things. That craving, that hunger for growth, for purpose, for discipline, that's dopamine mastered. Dopamine's influence is so subtle and far-reaching that many people live their entire lives directed by it without realizing they're not fully in control. Every time you set a goal, no matter how small, your brain is calculating the value of the reward and the effort required to achieve it. That calculation is mediated by dopamine. If the reward feels too far away, or the effort too great compared to the expected payoff, the dopamine release will be weak, and so will your motivation. This is why people often abandon long-term goals in favor of short-term gratification. It's not because they lack discipline, but because their brain chemistry is tilted toward immediacy. They haven't trained it to value persistence over payoff. This is why understanding and intentionally working with your dopamine system is the foundation of mastering personal ambition. There's a way to reverse this modern imbalance, to move from craving comfort to craving growth. But it begins with discomfort. Dopamine pathways that have been overused and overstimulated by easy rewards need time to reset. This means embracing a concept known as dopamine detox or dopamine reset, a period where you intentionally reduce your exposure to quick reward stimuli like excessive screen time, junk food, and impulsive entertainment. During this time, the brain becomes more sensitive again to natural sources of pleasure, like progress, connection, and physical activity. This detox doesn't mean eliminating joy or turning your life into a boot camp. It means recalibrating your pleasure system to recognize and appreciate the deeper, slower rewards of meaningful effort. It may feel uncomfortable at first because your brain has been conditioned to crave fast, frequent stimulation. But as you slowly reduce your reliance on instant gratification, you begin to regain clarity, energy, and motivation. You begin to feel the satisfaction of small progress. You begin to anticipate long-term goals with real excitement. You begin to hunger for the kind of work that stretches your mind and sharpens your skills, instead of the passive consumption that numbs you. Consider how much of modern life is engineered to exploit the dopamine system. Social media platforms, for example, are not neutral tools. They are carefully designed dopamine delivery machines. Every notification, every like, every swipe or scroll is a trigger, delivering a small burst of dopamine. Over time, this trains your brain to seek the path of least resistance, the hit without the effort. And because real success doesn't come in instant hits, but in slow progress, the more you indulge in these habits, the more disconnected you become from the very wiring that drives real achievement. The same pattern applies to food, entertainment, even online shopping. You don't need to be addicted to a substance to be hooked. If your behavior is being reinforced by constant, low-effort pleasure, your dopamine system is being rewired in the wrong direction. And with that rewiring comes a cost: lower focus, lower tolerance for boredom, and a general feeling that real work is too hard. But here lies the opportunity. The brain is plastic, changeable. It is constantly reshaping itself based on how you use it. If you start to shift your habits toward delayed gratification, if you begin to associate effort with reward, you'll gradually rewire your dopamine system for success. Over time, your brain will release dopamine not when you get something easily, but when you earn something through discipline and consistency. That's when your ambition becomes self-sustaining. You'll know this rewiring is happening when the hard things start to feel good. Not because they're no longer hard, but because your brain has started to crave the sense of progress they bring. Waking up early to work on your goals, staying focused during deep work sessions, resisting distractions. These will start to feel more satisfying than the quick dopamine traps you used to fall into. This is the turning point where discipline becomes desire, where the chase for comfort is replaced by the hunger for growth. There's no magic formula, but there is a biological one. Your habits are teaching your brain what to crave. Every day, every hour, you are training your dopamine system to either support your highest goals or sabotage them. Every time you choose to sit with boredom rather than escape into easy stimulation, you're strengthening the circuits that build resilience. Every time you delay a reward to stay focused on the process, you're reinforcing the ambition that leads to long-term success. Dopamine does not care about your goals. It simply responds to what you pay attention to. But you can care. You can decide to direct that attention toward goals that stretch you, not shrink you, toward the person you want to become, not the distractions that keep you stuck. In mastering dopamine, you reclaim the driver's seat of your ambition. You stop being a passenger to your impulses and start becoming the architect of your motivation. You learn to fuel your life with deeper, more lasting forms of satisfaction. And success becomes less about chasing rewards and more about building something worthy of being rewarded. The path to sustainable success isn't about eliminating pleasure. It's about earning it. That's what dopamine, when understood and mastered, can offer you. Not just a fleeting spark, but a fire that burns steadily, with purpose. Chapter 3: Cortisol and Serotonin, the battle of stress and stability. There is a silent war unfolding within your brain each day. A war between urgency and balance, between anxiety and peace, between mental overload and focus clarity. At the heart of this battle are two powerful neurochemicals, cortisol and serotonin. One is the voice of survival, the other the song of stability. One prepares you to fight or flee, while the other holds your emotional world together with calm assurance. To understand success at a deeper level, you must come to know how these two forces compete within your body, shaping not only your performance, but your long-term health, resilience, and emotional well-being. Cortisol is the hormone most commonly associated with stress. It is not your enemy. In fact, it evolved to keep you alive. Whenever your brain detects a threat, whether it's physical danger, emotional strain, or simply a looming deadline, cortisol is released. It sharpens your senses, increases your alertness, floods your system with energy, and prepares you to take immediate action. In short bursts, cortisol is helpful, even necessary. It can boost memory retention in the short term, increase motivation, and prime you for peak performance under pressure. But cortisol was never designed for modern life. It was built for survival, running from predators, protecting your tribe, adapting to environmental dangers. Today, those physical threats have been replaced by psychological ones: job insecurity, social rejection, information overload, financial strain, and endless digital distractions. The problem is, your brain doesn't distinguish between the two. It reacts to a rude email the same way it would have reacted to a rustle in the bushes thousands of years ago. The result is chronic stress, a prolonged elevation of cortisol that shifts your internal state into a permanent low-grade emergency. This chronic cortisol state is one of the most damaging forces to your long-term success. High levels of cortisol impair memory and concentration. They shrink the hippocampus, the brain's memory center, and weaken your ability to retain new information or make sound decisions. Over time, elevated cortisol also suppresses your immune function, disrupts your sleep, and increases inflammation throughout your body. When your body is constantly in survival mode, it becomes nearly impossible to thrive. Your creativity shrinks, your patience wears thin, and your focus becomes fragmented. Yet many people wear stress like a badge of honor. They equate being busy with being important, and they mistake pressure for productivity. But the truth is, the most successful people are not those who live in a constant state of urgency, but those who have learned to regulate their stress and return to a state of mental clarity. This is where serotonin comes into the picture. Serotonin is often misunderstood as simply the happiness chemical. In reality, it plays a much broader and deeper role in your sense of stability and well-being. It helps regulate mood, supports quality sleep, improves digestion, and contributes to a general sense of confidence and emotional resilience. When your serotonin levels are balanced, you feel calmer, more in control, and less reactive to minor setbacks. You sleep better, think more clearly, and navigate challenges with emotional steadiness. Low serotonin, by contrast, is linked to mood disorders, irritability, insomnia, poor impulse control, and a foggy, pessimistic mental state. It becomes harder to concentrate or maintain hope when things go wrong. Your emotional responses become exaggerated, and your ability to see the big picture is compromised. In this state, even small stressors can feel overwhelming, triggering even more cortisol and deepening the cycle of imbalance. Regaining control over this internal seesaw begins with a deliberate effort to manage your environment, your mindset, and your routines. Regulating cortisol is not about eliminating stress entirely. Life will always present challenges, but about building the tools and awareness to respond without being consumed. Mindfulness is one of the most effective strategies. Practicing present moment awareness, even for just a few minutes a day, teaches your brain to pause before reacting. It reduces the amplitude of the stress response, calming the nervous system and allowing serotonin to reassert its influence. Rest is another non-negotiable. Chronic sleep deprivation drives cortisol levels higher and serotonin levels lower, creating a loop of fatigue and emotional volatility. Deep, restorative sleep is essential for emotional regulation, memory consolidation, and hormone balance. Establishing clear boundaries around your time, screen usage, and energy also protects your brain's ability to recover. Boundaries signal safety to your brain. They allow you to exit fight or flight and re-enter a mode of calm and focused presence. Boosting serotonin is not complicated, but it requires consistency. Exposure to natural sunlight, especially early in the day, stimulates serotonin production and supports your circadian rhythm. Physical activity, particularly aerobic exercise like walking, swimming, or cycling, increases serotonin levels and improves your mood almost immediately. Gratitude practices have been shown to enhance serotonin activity as well, helping to reframe your focus toward what's working rather than what's wrong. Nutrition also plays a critical role. Foods rich in tryptophan, an amino acid that is a precursor to serotonin, such as eggs, cheese, turkey, nuts, and seeds, support healthy serotonin production. These aren't hacks. They are habits of emotional regulation and mental resilience. They are tools that allow you to face the chaos of the world with inner clarity. In the war between stress and stability, it is not brute strength that wins. It is self-awareness. It is the daily choices to pause before reacting, to sleep when tired, to say no when overextended, and to nourish the body that carries the brain. When you bring cortisol and serotonin into balance, something powerful happens. You stop feeling like you're surviving your goals and start thriving within them. Your focus sharpens. Your decisions improve. You bounce back faster when things go wrong. You become grounded, not because life is easy, but because your mind is steady. That steadiness is not accidental. It's the product of a nervous system that has learned how to return to calm after chaos, how to trust itself in the face of pressure, how to protect its clarity in a noisy world. Success is not just built on ambition. It is built on stability. It is rooted in the quiet strength of emotional balance, the kind of inner environment where clarity, confidence, and connection can flourish. Cortisol and serotonin are the architects of this environment. Learn to listen to them, to respect their rhythms, and you will build a foundation that no external pressure can easily shake. The real power does not come from doing more or pushing harder. It comes from creating the conditions within yourself where effort flows naturally, focus holds firm, and peace is never too far from reach. Winning this inner battle between stress and stability is not just a step toward success. It is the ground upon which all lasting success is built. If you look closely at the people who achieve greatness and sustain it, athletes at the peak of performance, leaders who stay calm in crisis, creators who produce consistently over decades, you'll find a common trait: emotional regulation. This is not just a matter of self-discipline or personality. It is a reflection of neurochemical balance. These individuals have, knowingly or not, found ways to manage the battle between cortisol and serotonin. They have built inner ecosystems where stress doesn't derail them, where focus is not constantly hijacked by emotional turbulence, and where calm under pressure is more than a lucky trait. It's a trained response. You see, cortisol is fast. It's reactive. It tells you to act now, to escape the threat, to brace for the worst. In a high-stakes situation, it floods your body instantly. But serotonin is slow. It builds with routine, with lifestyle, with repetition. It's not triggered by crisis, but cultivated through stability. Where cortisol is the body's alarm system, serotonin is the silent architect of resilience. It doesn't get much attention because it doesn't scream, but it quietly reinforces your ability to return to baseline, to keep going without collapsing emotionally. Too often, society rewards cortisol-driven behaviors. The nonstop hustle, the sleepless nights, the high-stress productivity sprints. It all looks impressive on the outside. But behind closed doors, the cost becomes clear. Relationships fray. Health declines. Mental clarity evaporates. And what's left is a hollow success. One that can't be sustained because the foundation has been eaten away by chronic, unregulated stress. This is why burnout has become the badge of the modern achiever. It's not that people aren't working hard enough. It's that they're working from a place of imbalance, and the chemistry doesn't lie. The great irony is that while cortisol can give you a momentary edge, it also sabotages the very traits that long-term success requires. It impairs memory, dulls creativity, and narrows your perspective. You might be hyper-focused on solving a problem, but you miss the bigger picture. You might be energized by pressure, but emotionally brittle underneath. Cortisol is useful for quick bursts of survival effort, but when it becomes your default state, it poisons your ability to lead, to innovate, and to think clearly. It wears you down from the inside out. Serotonin, however, is what allows you to show up day after day without crashing. It's the chemical that stabilizes your mind, allows for emotional maturity, and makes space for compassion, both for others and for yourself. A serotonin-rich brain can withstand more discomfort without breaking. It doesn't need to control everything to feel secure. It trusts in its own strength and has the clarity to say no to what doesn't serve it. This is the essence of sustainable success, not a frantic sprint, but a steady, grounded walk forward. And the beauty of this balance is that it's not out of reach. You don't need a prescription or a breakthrough. You need rhythm, daily habits, gentle consistency, sunlight in the morning, movement that gets your blood flowing, a meal that nourishes not just your stomach, but your mind, 10 minutes of deep breathing before your day begins, a gratitude practice that shifts your lens from lack to sufficiency. These things may seem simple, even boring compared to the fast pace of ambition, but they are chemically powerful. They restore serotonin. They tame cortisol. They rebuild your baseline. The brain remembers how you treat it. And over time, it starts to prefer stability over chaos, focus over urgency, groundedness over adrenaline. This isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's choosing to build a success that doesn't destroy you in the process. It's saying no to the myth that you must suffer constantly to achieve something meaningful. True high performance doesn't come from pushing yourself past the edge. It comes from knowing how to return to center again and again without losing yourself. When you begin to build your life around this understanding, When you intentionally design your days to protect your serotonin and respect your cortisol response, you are no longer reacting to life. You are responding with intention. You become less controlled by emotion and more capable of using emotion as information. You stop fearing stress and instead begin to navigate it. You stop chasing stillness and begin creating it. This is not just about mental health. It's about mental power. The power to think clearly in the midst of pressure. The power to rest without guilt. The power to maintain momentum when others crash. The power to connect deeply, lead wisely, and make decisions from a place of calm intelligence. This is the chemistry of true leadership, true influence, true fulfillment. When cortisol and serotonin are in balance, you don't just manage your stress, you master your state. And from that state, anything becomes possible. Not because you're forcing it, but because you're finally aligned with the biology that was always meant to carry you there. Chapter 4. Oxytocin, the chemistry of connection and influence. In the architecture of success, few elements are as underestimated and yet as essential as connection. Not the surface-level kind built on transactional networking or charm, but the deep-rooted, trust-based bonds that tap into our biological design as social beings. At the center of this lies oxytocin, a neurochemical often romanticized as the love hormone, but in truth, it is far more than that. Oxytocin is the biochemical foundation for trust, collaboration, emotional resonance, and influence. Without it, no amount of strategy or skill can create the kind of leadership that truly lasts. Oxytocin fuels our capacity for empathy. It is what allows us to sense and respond to the emotions of others, to tune into their needs and intentions. This chemical makes connection feel safe and rewarding. When oxytocin flows freely in the brain, people become more generous, more open, more loyal. In business, in leadership, in mentorship, this translates into one of the most powerful tools available: influence through authenticity. It's the invisible thread that binds teams together and enables communities to move in unison toward a shared vision. When we look at the most respected and impactful leaders, those who inspire rather than intimidate, who guide rather than control, we find individuals who operate with high emotional intelligence. They read the emotional landscape of a room like a second language. They sense when morale is dipping or when trust is fragile. And whether they know it or not, these leaders are not just being kind or charismatic. They're triggering oxytocin in those around them. Their presence alone can make others feel safe, seen, and willing to contribute more fully. That's not magic. That's chemistry. From a neurological standpoint, oxytocin is the antidote to fear. Where cortisol floods the body during conflict or isolation, oxytocin balances it with calm, connection, and clarity. It literally softens the nervous system, turning down the stress response and turning up cooperation. In environments where oxytocin levels are high, whether in a family, a friendship, or a workplace, people listen better, think more clearly, and collaborate more willingly. Ideas flow, loyalty builds, creativity sparks. That's because the brain is no longer in defense mode. It's in a state of emotional openness. But the reverse is also true. In the absence of connection, the consequences are far-reaching. Chronic loneliness doesn't just feel bad, it rewires the brain. Without the regular stimulation of oxytocin, the brain becomes hypervigilant, flooded with stress hormones, and primed for suspicion. This doesn't just affect mood, it undermines decision-making, memory, and even immune function. In leadership, a lack of connection leads to disengagement. In personal life, it leads to depression. The truth is, no one is designed to thrive in isolation, no matter how ambitious or independent they seem on the outside. In today's high-speed, high-performance culture, the emphasis is often placed on individual effort. Grind harder, focus more, compete fiercely. But the irony is that some of the most powerful accelerators of success come from stepping outside of ourselves. It's in listening deeply, asking better questions, celebrating others, creating space for vulnerability and feedback. These small acts release oxytocin, not just in the person receiving kindness, but in the person giving it. Connection doesn't just feel good. It changes the brain, creating an internal environment more conducive to clarity, resilience, and joy. One of the most misunderstood truths about success is that it's not just about output, it's about state. The most effective people don't just work hard. They work from a state of internal alignment, emotional intelligence, and social flow. They know that a well-timed word of encouragement, a shared laugh, or a moment of honesty can shift the chemistry of an entire team. That's not just soft skills. That's neuroscience at work. The challenge, of course, is that oxytocin doesn't surge through superficial gestures. It's not activated by pretending to care or using connection as a tactic. It requires genuine presence. It requires attention, real attention, not multitasking while nodding politely. It grows in spaces where people feel safe enough to be themselves, to bring their full voice to the table, to trust that they matter beyond their output. And when that happens, everything changes. People don't just follow a leader, they commit. They don't just contribute to a team, they protect it. They don't just perform, they elevate. True success, the kind that lasts and spreads, is never created alone. It is the product of relationships built on trust, shared values, and emotional resonance. These are not luxuries to be added after goals are met. They're the mechanism by which goals are met. When you learn to cultivate oxytocin, not through manipulation, but through authentic human presence, you unlock a hidden layer of potential in every room you walk into. Oxytocin reminds us that we are not machines. We are not meant to operate in isolation. We are wired for connection. And when we lean into that wiring with purpose and humility, we create a success story that includes others, that uplifts communities, and that endures even when the spotlight fades. Because in the end, what propels you forward is not just your ambition, but the bonds that fuel your brain, steady your emotions, and remind you that you never had to do this alone. This chemistry of connection goes deeper than simple camaraderie or social support. It forms the core operating system for influence, leadership, and innovation. Oxytocin doesn't just improve our mood or make us more agreeable. It fundamentally alters how we interpret reality. It shapes our sense of safety, belonging, and meaning. When we feel connected to others, when we're part of something greater than ourselves, our brain opens up to possibility. It becomes more receptive to new ideas, more courageous in risk-taking, and more resilient in the face of adversity. In contrast, when oxytocin is absent, even the most brilliant minds can become closed systems. The brain underconnected to others is a brain under siege, driven by self-preservation, stuck in defensive thinking, resistant to collaboration. This is where brilliant ideas go to die, in the isolation of chronic independence, where everything must be achieved alone. It's no surprise that some of the most intelligent, hard-working individuals still struggle to break through. It's not a lack of ability. It's a chemical deficit of connection. They're starved of the very neurotransmitter that enables growth through relationship. Trust is the gateway to oxytocin. And trust, unlike charisma or authority, cannot be demanded. It must be cultivated. It is built slowly, through consistency, through alignment between words and actions, through humility. It requires a willingness to be seen, not just as competent, but as human. Leaders who master this are not necessarily the loudest or the most confident. Often, they're the ones who ask the most questions, who remember names, who create space for others to speak first, who own their mistakes. These subtle behaviors trigger oxytocin not just in others, but in themselves, creating a reinforcing loop of mutual respect and safety. What's remarkable is how oxytocin reinforces our natural desire to contribute. In group settings where oxytocin levels are high, people are more likely to help, to share ideas, and to sacrifice personal gain for collective benefit. This isn't forced altruism. It's neurochemistry responding to trust. The more we feel like we belong, the more we want to give. That's why elite teams and enduring partnerships are often less about the individual stars and more about the invisible chemistry between them. Modern neuroscience is now catching up to what ancient wisdom has always suggested. Human beings are relational creatures. We are wired to thrive in tribe, in family, in teams. The lone wolf may survive, but the connected human thrives. This explains why mentorship accelerates growth, why collaboration fuels innovation, and why loneliness, despite our hyperconnected world, is a silent killer of potential. Oxytocin, in many ways, is the biological evidence for why community matters. This also reframes the meaning of influence. Influence is not about controlling others. It's about creating environments where others feel safe enough to grow. When oxytocin is flowing, people don't just follow you because of your title. They follow because they feel seen. They believe that their well-being is tied to your leadership. That's a sacred responsibility and also a strategic advantage. Because when people feel that kind of bond, they go above and beyond, not out of obligation, but out of loyalty and shared purpose. The path to sustainable success, then, is not a solitary race to the top. It is a woven network of trust, empathy, and shared progress. It is filled with small moments, the eye contact that says, "I'm with you," the unexpected encouragement when someone feels invisible, the patient listening that dissolves walls. These are the moments that release oxytocin. These are the moments that build legacies. Even in innovation-driven industries, where data and performance dominate, the most successful organizations are often those that intentionally engineer trust. They design systems where feedback is safe, where conflict is navigated with empathy, and where collaboration is not just encouraged, but expected. These environments are oxytocin-rich, and their success is not just in their output, but in the human chemistry they consistently foster. To cultivate oxytocin intentionally is to begin leading from the inside out. It's a shift in focus from "how do I win?" to "how do I create the conditions for us to win together?" It's a commitment to relationship building as a daily discipline, not a soft skill, but a strategic biochemical advantage. It's choosing depth over speed, trust over dominance, and connection over control. In a world that often celebrates individualism and self-reliance, oxytocin reminds us of the hidden truth. Your success, your health, and your fulfillment are all deeply tied to how you connect with others. It's not weakness to need people, it's neurobiology. And when we begin to honor that reality, we unlock a dimension of success that is not only more powerful, but more human. Because at the end of the day, the brain is not wired for isolation. It is wired for love, for trust, for tribe. And the more we align our lives with that truth, the more limitless our potential becomes. Chapter 5. Rewiring your brain for success. The idea that we can rewire our brains used to sound like science fiction. Today, it's a scientific fact. At the heart of this reality is the concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's incredible ability to change its structure and function based on what we consistently do, feel, think, and experience. Every repeated behavior, every thought pattern, every reaction creates pathways in the brain, carving new grooves in our neural circuitry. Over time, these patterns either empower us or imprison us. This means success is not about being born with the right traits. It's about training your brain with the right chemistry. Your habits, routines, relationships, diet, and sleep are not just lifestyle choices. They are signals to your brain. And the brain is always listening. It adapts. It evolves. It strengthens what you use and weakens what you neglect. The question is no longer, can I change, but what am I teaching my brain to become? Morning and evening routines are two of the most potent windows for rewiring your brain. These are not just motivational fluff. They are biochemical rituals that anchor your neurochemistry for the day ahead or the sleep that restores your mind overnight. A powerful morning routine doesn't start with checking your phone or diving into stress. It begins with intention. Hydration, movement, sunlight, breath work, and a few moments of clarity, whether through journaling, gratitude, or visualization, can reset your dopamine and cortisol levels, sharpen your focus, and energize your motivation. When done consistently, these habits lay the groundwork for an alert, purposeful brain throughout the day. Evening routines, on the other hand, are about release. The body can't recharge under stress. Cortisol must fall, and melatonin must rise. That means stepping away from screens, slowing the nervous system, and creating mental closure. Reading, gentle stretching, breath awareness, and digital disconnection send clear signals to your brain that it's time to rest and repair. And it's during sleep, particularly deep sleep, that your brain detoxifies, consolidates memory, and strengthens neural connections built during the day. But routines are just one piece of the puzzle. To truly tap into your brain's potential, you must learn to enter what psychologists call the flow state, a deeply immersive mental zone where time melts away, self-doubt disappears, and productivity skyrockets. This isn't luck. Flow is a neurochemical cocktail, a balance of dopamine, norepinephrine, endorphins, and anandamide. You access it by finding the edge of your skill level, setting clear goals, and reducing distractions. Whether you're writing, building, designing, coding, or solving a problem, the formula is similar: complete focus, deep enjoyment, and the right challenge-to-skill ratio. When you structure your day to make space for flow, through time blocking, intentional work rituals, or turning off notifications, you don't just work harder, you work at a chemically optimized state. Success is also built on the foundation of lifestyle design. You can't think clearly on poor nutrition. You can't be creative in a sleep-deprived state. You can't solve complex problems if your body is sedentary and your blood sugar spikes like a roller coaster. Everything you consume, whether food, media, or energy, either supports or sabotages your brain chemistry. Whole foods rich in omega-3s, antioxidants, and amino acids feed the neurotransmitters that drive motivation, focus, and mood. Regular movement doesn't just build physical health. It boosts BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a molecule crucial for learning and mental agility. Even 10 minutes of walking can shift your neurochemical balance away from stress and into clarity. Sleep, too, is not optional. It is non-negotiable brain maintenance. Deprive yourself of it, and you not only impair memory and decision-making, you increase cortisol, decrease serotonin, and erode your emotional resilience. The most successful people are not the busiest. They are the most balanced. They understand that rest is not a reward for hard work. It is a prerequisite for peak mental performance. And then there's mindset, the inner voice narrating your life. Whether you're aware of it or not, your thoughts generate chemical responses in the brain. A mindset of scarcity, comparison, and fear floods your system with stress hormones. But a mindset trained toward gratitude, curiosity, and optimism, that rebalances your chemistry towards serotonin, dopamine, and resilience. Mindset is not just philosophy. It's a neurochemical feedback loop. What you focus on, you fuel. What you rehearse, you reinforce. This is why affirmations, cognitive reframing, and visualization have such real effects. They're not magic. They're repetition. And the brain respects repetition. The hidden truth behind success isn't talent or luck. It's chemistry, consistently directed. The people who seem unstoppable are not running on superhuman willpower. They are running on trained biology. They've aligned their environment, their habits, their mindsets, and their relationships to produce the internal state that fuels achievement. They've rewired their brains not just to survive, but to thrive. And you can too. You can choose to stop reacting to life and start programming your neurochemistry with intention. Every choice you make, what you eat, how you breathe, what you say to yourself, who you spend time with, either reinforces old patterns or creates new ones. The power is in your hands. Your brain is not fixed. It is fertile ground. And success, when you see it clearly, is not a distant mountain to climb. It's a daily experiment in chemistry, designed by you, sustained by you, and mastered one small, repeated choice at a time. It's essential to understand that your biology is not your destiny, but it is your starting point. Every single day, your brain interprets your environment, habits, and internal dialogue, and uses them as building blocks to reconfigure itself. Just as muscles respond to physical training, your brain reshapes in response to mental and emotional practice. This is why those who deliberately align their environment and behaviors to support their highest goals don't just change their mindset. They change the actual physical architecture of their brains. At the core of this transformation lies intentionality. Rewiring isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters most, more consistently. This calls for a clear understanding of the habits that either reinforce or dismantle the neural pathways tied to procrastination, distraction, emotional reactivity, or self-doubt. These default responses weren't born overnight. They were trained into place. And with conscious repetition, they can be replaced. If every thought is a neural impulse, every repeated thought is a construction project. You're either reinforcing the architecture of success or fortifying the walls of limitation. And then there's the role of emotional regulation in this equation. Many people sabotage their progress not because they lack intelligence, discipline, or ambition, but because they are run by unprocessed emotion and unconscious triggers. Emotional regulation is deeply tied to your brain's chemistry. When you're reactive, your amygdala, the brain's fear center, governs your decisions. When you're calm and reflective, the prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic, planning, and self-control, takes charge. By training yourself to pause before reacting, to reflect before responding, and to breathe through emotional discomfort, you shift the brain's leadership from survival mode to strategic thinking. This shift is critical, especially when cultivating resilience and adaptability. The world isn't static, and neither is success. Conditions change. Plans fail. But those who thrive are not the ones who avoid disruption. They're the ones whose brains are primed to adapt quickly and constructively. Neuroplasticity empowers you to do just that. Each time you embrace a challenge, each time you reframe failure as feedback, and each time you choose curiosity over self-judgment, your brain becomes more flexible, more creative, and more robust. Neuroplasticity also teaches us to take self-compassion seriously, not as an emotional indulgence, but as a cognitive strategy. Harsh self-criticism floods your body with cortisol, impairing learning and problem-solving. But self-compassion activates regions of the brain associated with safety and growth. When you treat mistakes as data and setbacks as temporary, you open the door for innovation and emotional stamina. Success isn't born from perfection. It's built on the courage to experiment, fail forward, and trust in your ability to course correct. In addition, sensory environments shape brain chemistry more than most realize. Clutter, noise, and artificial light overstimulate your nervous system and dull focus. But calm, well-lit, aesthetically aligned environments activate your parasympathetic nervous system, the mode associated with digestion, restoration, and creative thinking. This is why curating your workspace, adding natural elements, or even working near a window can subtly but powerfully improve mental clarity and emotional balance. Your surroundings are either friction or flow, and every detail counts. One of the most underestimated tools for rewiring is intentional silence. In a world overflowing with noise, content, and notifications, the brain is rarely allowed to rest. But in silence, the brain enters what neuroscientists call the default mode network, where it processes experiences, consolidates memory, and makes meaning. Silence is not empty. It is restorative. It is the space in which ideas integrate, perspectives shift, and insights emerge. Even 10 minutes of silence a day, no music, no scrolling, no input, can create measurable changes in focus and emotional regulation. Rewiring the brain also requires ritualizing your ideal identity, not just what you want to achieve, but who you must become to sustain it. Visualization is one tool for this, not as a wishful fantasy, but as a way to hardwire belief. When you visualize yourself showing up with confidence, finishing a difficult task, or stepping into a new level of leadership, your brain doesn't just imagine, it rehearses. Over time, it begins to treat those rehearsals as reality, reducing anxiety and boosting self-efficacy. When you combine visualization with physical motion, like power poses, deep breathing, or even walking, it embeds the imagined identity deeper into your nervous system. All of this leads to a single truth. You are not stuck with the brain you woke up with this morning. Every micro-action, every reframe, every breath and boundary is a brick in the foundation of your future self. Rewiring your brain for success is not about chasing motivation or inspiration. It's about choosing, day after day, to live in a way that signals your brain to become the version of you that success requires.